Julie Foudy and Jeff Carlisle join the show. Guys, the U.S. women's national team will appeal a judge's recent decision in their equal pay lawsuit, a decision that went almost entirely the way of U.S. soccer. Julie, let's start with you. We knew that an appeal was coming. I wonder from here, what's the end game for the players?
I still think, even though they did appeal, I still think the end game is getting to the table. And I think both are starting to realize that. U.S. Soccer has always realized that and have been wanting to get to the table with no success because they realized they were in a no-win situation. Even though they won, and I put that in air quotes, largely the compensation piece of this trial, right? They realized they've lost in public sentiment. And some of the sponsors, of course, have voiced their disapproval of the way they've handled this. And they know they have to make amends here. And so the women, on the other hand, the players, they realize this could be a 2-year process. It could be a bargaining chip that they hold in their pocket to get to the table, that they drop the appeal. But I think a 2-year process that you don't know the outcome again, if you stay with the appeal, is something that doesn't favor the future of the women. I think they should get to the table.
Jeff, I'm interested in the Federation's perspective here. Despite the legal victory, it does seem like there's still an awful long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as Julie mentioned, I think there's huge incentive for the Federation to want to kickstart negotiations. I think they've been at that place for months and months. I mean, you remember the March 7th letter from then President Carlos Cordero, where he expressed the Federation's desire to get back to the table, and he extended some terms that the women were wanting in terms of having the same bonuses, for games that the USSF controlled. So again, I think that's a huge motivation for the Federation. Obviously, they've been bloodied by this, just in as Julie mentioned, in the way that they've carried this out. Granted, a lot of it is of its own making, but especially with almost a completely new leadership structure in place for the Federation, both in terms of the president, Cindy Parlow-Cone, and the new CEO, Will Wilson. I think there is a revised or a revived movement to want to get to the negotiating table and put this behind them. And the other thing that's kind of hanging over all of this a little bit is the CBA that both sides are currently operating under ends or expires at the end of 2021. So, I think the sooner that they can get, a settlement worked out, the easier that it will be to start those negotiations. But I think that will also be an incentive for both sides to try to come to the table and get something done.
Guys, something else that'll impact the U.S. women's national team. Alex Morgan had a baby this past week. That's right. Happy Mother's Day to Alex Morgan, her husband, Servando Carrasco. Obviously, plenty of reason to celebrate as well. Julie, it seems like kind of an outlier now to see a player in their prime have a baby. Do you think, though, what we're seeing from Alex Morgan may be the beginning of a trend in women's soccer?
Well, for women's soccer players, I think they've proven that you can have a baby and get back pretty quickly. I mean, we've seen it from, going back to my days, Joy Fawcett and Carla Overbeck being the OGs of this, and the originals who were moms and able to combine and balance 2 great careers and being a mom as well. So Christy Rampone, Amy Rodriguez, Jessica McDonald, who's still playing right now. So I think, they realize, and I think Alex is trying to point out that both are possible. I think the timeline that Alex put herself under, had the Olympics actually happened on time in 2020, would have been a really tight turnaround. She would have had to prove that she could make the team in about a month. I think the delay of the Olympics obviously helps that timeline a ton. But I think she will prove to a lot of females out there who are wondering if they could do both, that absolutely you can do this.
When she does come back, Julie, she'll have to fight through a lot of talented players for that top striker spot. Who do you think is her number one competition when Morgan gets back on the field?
I think you have to talk about Carly Lloyd and what she's been doing from that number 9 target position under Vlatko Andonovski ever since Jill Ellis stepped away from the job and Vlatko Andonovski came in. He has, and in large part because Alex Morgan has been pregnant, he has put her in that starting position in the number 9, and she's been doing well. 5 goals, 4 assists, the 8 games she's played under him. But the thing he likes most about Carly Lloyd is not just the offensive production, is what she does defensively and how hard she works. And Sebi, you and I have talked to him at length about this. He gushes, Vlatko does, about the amount of work that Carly does on the defensive side of the ball as well. But I see this actually as more of a tag team. I mean, what a great option to have Carly Lloyd, who will be 39 if the Olympics are to happen in 2021, and Alex Morgan, who's had a year to come back from her pregnancy, available as a tag team for that position. And I think that's where he's going to go. I think you're going to see a lot of rotation in the next year and a half with Vlatko Andonovski and an aging U.S. women's national team.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.